Tonight is about legacy, Arthur boomed, his voice warm and charismatic as he tapped his spoon against his champagne glass. The room went silent. I straightened my dress, preparing my humble acceptance smile. And legacy is about blood. Please welcome the new head of Titan Architecture, my daughter, Bella. The applause was polite, confused, and hesitant. My heart simply stopped. Bella? She had dropped out of design school twice and spent the last 3 years finding herself in Europe on Arthur's credit card. She walked onto the stage, wearing a dress that cost more than my car, and smirked at me. Arthur didn't even look at me. In 10 seconds, 10 years of loyalty evaporated. The crystal chandelier above the ballroom floor shimmered, catching the light in a way that usually made me feel proud. Tonight, however, it felt like an interrogation lamp. I stood next to Arthur, the man who had been my mentor, boss, and father figure for the last 10 years. We were celebrating the 30th anniversary of Titan Architecture. Everyone in the room, clients, city officials, competitors, knew what was coming next. Arthur was retiring, and I was stepping up as managing partner. It was the natural order of things. I had built this firm alongside him, sacrificing my weekends, my social life, and my sleep to turn his small studio into a citywide empire. The morning after the gala, the office felt like a graveyard. The silence was heavy, suffocating. I walked straight into Arthur's office, bypassing his nervous assistant. He was sitting behind his mahogany desk, looking unbothered, sipping his espresso like he hadn't just publicly destroyed my career. "You promised me the firm," I said, my voice shaking not with sadness, but with a cold, hard rage. I didn't scream, I wanted answers. I needed to understand how he could look me in the eye for a decade and lie. Arthur sighed, putting his cup down with a clink that echoed in the room. "Morgan, be realistic. It's a family business. You're talented, sure, but you're just staff. Bella is family. You'll understand when you have children of your own." The condescension hit me like a physical slap. "I'm the one who fixed the structural issues on the bridge project," I reminded him. "I'm the one who saved the museum contract." Arthur waved his hand dismissively. "And you were paid well for it. Don't be dramatic. Bella needs guidance. You'll stay on as her mentor. It's a good role for you." He truly believed I would stay and babysit the person who stole my future. By noon, the transition had already begun, and it was brutal. Bella arrived 2 hours late, holding an iced latte and wearing sunglasses indoors. She didn't come to introduce herself to the team or ask about ongoing projects. She marched straight to my corner office, the one I had earned after 5 years of sleeping under my desk to meet deadlines. "The light is better in here for my selfies," she announced, popping her gum. "Dad said you wouldn't mind moving." I stood there, watching her drop her designer bag onto my blueprints. "These are sensitive schematics for the hospital wing," I said, trying to keep my composure. She laughed, a sharp, grating sound. "Relax, Morgan. It's just drawings. Anyway, I need you to move your stuff to the cubicle by the printer. And while you're at it, can you grab me a sparkling water? Room temp." She dismissed me like I was a waitress. I looked at the staff outside the glass walls. They were watching, terrified. They knew if this could happen to me, none of them were safe. I packed my box in silence, but I didn't get her the water. I just stared at her until she looked away. The final nail in the coffin was the Skyview Tower project. This was the biggest contract in the city's history, a billion-dollar residential skyscraper that would define the skyline. I had spent 6 months courting the investors, drawing preliminary sketches, and running the math. It was my baby. But in the first strategy meeting, Bella took the head of the table. She looked at my detailed structural plans and wrinkled her nose. "It's too boring," she declared. "We need more glass. Curved glass. Everywhere." I tried to explain the physics. "Bella, at this height, wind resistance is a major factor. If we add that much glass without steel reinforcement, the sway will be dangerous. She rolled her eyes and looked at Arthur. Dad, she's being negative again. She just hates my creativity. Arthur, who knew better, who knew the codes as well as I did, didn't back me up. He looked at the table and said, Morgan, let's try it Bella's way. We need to be modern. I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. This wasn't just about ugliness or ego anymore. They were compromising safety to stroke a 24-year-old's vanity. They were playing with gravity, and gravity never loses. Over the next few weeks, I was slowly erased from existence. It started with the emails. I used to be CC'd on everything: budget approvals, contractor updates, client meetings. Suddenly, my inbox was empty. I walked past the conference room and saw Bella and Arthur laughing with the Skyview investors, presenting a flashy 3D model that I knew was structurally unsound. When I tried to enter, the door was locked. Bella looked up through the glass and offered a petty little wave. I went back to my cubicle near the noisy printer and checked the server. My access to the main architectural drive had been revoked. Read only flashed across my screen. I was being shut out of the project I created. But they made a mistake. They forgot that I had personal relationships with the people who actually built the buildings. The foremen, the steel suppliers, the concrete guys, they knew me. They didn't know Bella. While she was busy picking out curtains and hosting champagne lunches, I was getting texts from the ground. The first text came from the site manager, Morgan, they're switching the steel grade. This isn't what we discussed. Call me. I took the call in the stairwell, the only place where I could be sure no one was listening. The site manager, a gruff man named Frank who had worked with me for years, sounded panicked. Morgan, the new specs came in this morning signed by Bella. They downgraded the steel support beams to grade B. They're trying to save $3 million to funnel it into the lobby. Aesthetics. My blood ran cold. Grade B steel was fine for a shopping mall, but for a 60-story tower in a high wind zone? It was criminal. Frank, do not pour the concrete, I ordered, my voice hard. If you pour around those beams, there's no going back. Frank sighed. I can stall for 48 hours, Morgan. But if I don't get a signed change order reverting it back, I have to follow the blueprints or I get sued. I hung up, my hands shaking. This was no longer just workplace drama. This was negligence. Arthur was letting his daughter gut the skeleton of the building to make the skin look pretty. He was risking lives to protect her fragile ego and his retirement fund. I had to stop them, even if it cost me the last shred of my career. I stormed into Arthur's office without knocking. Bella was there, looking at fabric swatches. We need to talk, I said, slamming the steel specifications onto the desk. You downgraded the beams. This building will not hold up in a storm. Bella didn't even flinch. She just sighed dramatically. Oh my God, Dad, she's obsessed with me. She's just jealous because I'm saving the company money and she couldn't. I looked at Arthur, pleading with the engineer in him. Arthur, look at the load-bearing calculations. You know this is wrong. You taught me this. For a second, I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. He knew. But then he looked at Bella, his daughter, who was pouting and waiting for him to defend her. The fear vanished, replaced by a cold, stubborn wall. Morgan, you're undermining leadership, Arthur said sternly. The specs are fine. We have a new engineer signing off on them. I realized then that he had found someone corrupt enough to stamp the plans. I won't let you do this, I whispered. Arthur stood up, his face red. Then you can leave. But first, you're going to sign the handover documents effectively blessing the design, or I will make sure you are blacklisted from every firm in the state. The room was deadly quiet. Arthur pushed the document toward me. It was a compliance approval form. If I signed it, I was taking responsibility for Bella's design. If the building fell down, I would go to jail, and they would claim they just followed my advice. It was a trap. But if I didn't sign, Arthur threatened to destroy my reputation, claiming I was incompetent and difficult. He held the pen out to me, his eyes daring me to defy him. Bella watched with a smirk, convinced she had won. I took the pen. I felt the weight of it in my hand. I looked at the paper, then at Arthur, then at Bella. I thought about the 10 years I gave them. I thought about the families who would live in that tower. With a steady hand, I leaned over the desk. I didn't sign my name. Instead, I wrote "refuse due to safety violations" in thick, bold letters across the signature line. I dropped the pen. It rolled off the desk and hit the floor. "I'm not signing your death warrant, Arthur," I said quietly. "And I'm not working here anymore." I walked out of the office, my heart pounding against my ribs like a hammer. I didn't pack a box. I didn't take a stapler. I just grabbed my purse and walked toward the elevators. The office was silent. Everyone had heard the shouting. As I pressed the button for the lobby, I heard a chair scrape against the floor. I turned around. It was Marcus, the senior lead designer. He stood up, looked at Arthur's closed door, and then looked at me. Without a word, he grabbed his jacket. Then Sarah, the project manager, stood up. Then two of the junior architects. It was a ripple effect. They knew that if I, the person who actually ran the place, was leaving because of safety concerns, staying was professional suicide. Arthur burst out of his office, his face purple with rage. "If you walk out that door, don't think about coming back. You're all ungrateful traitors," he screamed. I didn't look back. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped in. Marcus and Sarah squeezed in beside me. As the doors closed on Arthur's screaming face, Marcus looked at me and exhaled. "So," he asked, "where are we going for lunch?" The adrenaline wore off about 3 days later. The reality of my situation set in as I sat on my living room floor, surrounded by unpaid bills. Arthur was a man of his word. He had called every major firm in the city. I had 3 interviews cancelled within 24 hours. We heard there were performance issues, one recruiter told me awkwardly. The lie was spreading. Arthur was painting me as unstable and difficult, protecting his daughter's reputation by destroying mine. I felt small. I felt defeated. I stared at the blank television, wondering if I should just move to a different state and start over. Then, my phone buzzed. It was Frank, the site manager. "They fired me, Morgan," he said, his voice thick with anger. Bella didn't like that I asked questions about the concrete. "They brought in a scab crew who won't ask questions." That was the spark I needed. It wasn't just about me anymore. They were removing anyone with a conscience. If I ran away, I was letting them win. I looked at my sketches on the coffee table. I didn't need a big firm. I didn't need their money. I just needed to be better than them. And that, I realized, wouldn't be very hard. I opened Morgan Studios the following week. It wasn't glamorous. The office was my dining room table, and the conference room was the local coffee shop down the street. Marcus and Sarah joined me, working for free at first, fueled by spite and cheap pastries. We were small, but we were dangerous because we were hungry. While Titan architecture was bloated with ego and nepotism, we were lean and fast. We focused on the clients Arthur considered too small, the boutique renovations, the community centers, the eco-friendly retrofits. We worked 18-hour days. Meanwhile, stories began to drift out of Titan. Deadlines were being missed. The budget for the Skyview Tower was ballooning because Bella kept changing her mind about the aesthetics mid-construction. We heard she spent $50,000 on imported marble for the lobby while the contractors were waiting on payments for the electrical wiring. We kept our heads down. Built our reputation brick by brick, honest project by honest project. We were the tortoise. They were the hare, drunk on power and napping at the wheel. 6 months passed. Our little firm moved into a modest rented loft. It had exposed brick and drafty windows, but it was ours. The irony was that our single window looked directly across the city skyline at the Skyview Tower rising in the distance. It was growing fast, too fast. Every morning, I drank my coffee and watched the cranes lift steel into the sky. To the untrained eye, it looked impressive. A glittering needle of glass piercing the clouds. But I wasn't looking with an untrained eye. I pulled out my binoculars one morning. I focused on the alignment of the curtain wall on the 30th floor. It was subtle, maybe only an inch off, but the glass panels were warping slightly. The building was settling unevenly. The grade B steel was flexing too much under the weight of the heavy glass Bella insisted on. My stomach churned. It wasn't going to fall down today, but the stress fractures were already forming deep inside the skeleton. It was a ticking time bomb, wrapped in luxury branding. I put the binoculars down. I didn't need to sabotage them. Physics was already doing the work for me. The city inspection was scheduled for November. This was the big hurdle. If the building passed the structural integrity test, they could open for pre-sales. I knew there was no way that building could pass a legitimate inspection. I waited for the news of the delay, for the stop work order. It never came. Instead, the headlines read, Skyview Tower cleared for completion. I was baffled. Then I made a few calls to my old contacts at the city planning office. Who signed off on it? I asked an old friend. He lowered his voice. It was Inspector Higgins. You know him. I did. Higgins was known for having heavy pockets. He had been months away from retirement. Suddenly, it all made sense. Arthur had used his personal connections and checkbook to buy a green light. He was gambling everything, his fortune, his freedom, human lives, on the hope that the building would hold together long enough to sell the condos and cash out. He wasn't building a legacy anymore, he was building a crime scene. We didn't leak the information. We didn't have to. The construction workers, the ones Arthur and Bella treated like invisible disposable tools, started talking. Rumors swirled in the local bars and union halls. The floors aren't level, one guy said. The windows are cracking before they're even installed, said another. These whispers made their way to the real estate blogs. Then to the investors. The stock price of Titan Architecture took a slight dip. It wasn't a crash, just a wobble. But it was enough to make Arthur panic. He was leveraged to the hilt. He needed the pre-sales to pay back the bank loans. If the rumors persisted, no one would buy the condos. The pressure was mounting. In our drafty loft, the phone rang. It wasn't a client. It was Arthur's assistant. He wants to see you, she said, her voice tight. He says it's urgent. I looked at Marcus and Sarah. They smirked. Let him wait, I said. Tell him I can fit him in next Tuesday. Arthur didn't wait until Tuesday. He showed up at my loft on Friday evening. He looked older. His skin was gray, his suit looked a little loose. He looked around our scrappy office with disdain, but I saw the desperation underneath. Morgan, he started, trying to summon his old authority. I'm willing to let bygones be bygones. We need a senior project manager for the final phase. I'm offering you your old salary, plus a 10% bonus. He was trying to hire me back to fix the mess Bella had made. He wanted me to put my name on the project so the investors would calm down. He wanted a scapegoat. I sat on the edge of my desk, crossing my arms. I don't want my old salary, Arthur. And I certainly don't want to step foot on that death trap you're building. He stiffened. It's perfectly safe, he lied. Then why are you here? I asked. Why are you asking the traitor for help? He grit his teeth. Bella is overwhelmed. She needs support. I laughed. No, Arthur. You need a shield. And I'm not it. Get out of my office. 2 weeks later, the inevitable happened. It was a windy Tuesday. A piece of the exterior cladding, a heavy decorative panel that Bella had insisted upon, sheared off from the 45th floor. It plummeted to the street below. Miraculously, it didn't kill anyone, but it smashed into a parked car, crushing it like a soda can. The noise echoed through the city. Sirens wailed. News helicopters circled the tower. The footage was everywhere, falling debris at Skyview Tower. This wasn't a rumor anymore. It was breaking news. The city immediately issued a stop work order. The safety perimeter was expanded. Titan Architecture released a statement blaming unforeseen weather conditions, but everyone knew it was a lie. The wind was normal for the season. The building was shedding its skin because the skeleton was weak. I watched the news from my phone, feeling a mix of vindication and horror. It had started. The unraveling was no longer theoretical. The next morning, Arthur went on live television for damage control. I expected him to apologize. I expected him to take responsibility. Instead, he looked into the camera with sad, puppy dog eyes and said, "It breaks my heart." These design flaws date back to the early stages of the project, under the previous management of our former director, Morgan. I dropped my coffee mug. It shattered on the floor. He was framing me. He was rewriting history to claim that I was the one who designed the faulty panels before I left. It was a bold, desperate lie. My phone started blowing up with hate mail and angry questions from reporters. He was trying to bury me under the rubble of his own failure. I stood there, shaking, tears pricking my eyes. But then my lawyer, a sharp woman named Diane who had been itching for a fight, called me. "Did you hear him?" she asked, sounding almost giddy. "He just defamed you on national TV. He just opened the door for discovery. We're going to sue him, and we're going to get every email he's ever written." The lawsuit was brutal, but fast. Because Arthur had blamed me publicly, we had the legal right to demand the internal communications regarding the design changes to prove my innocence. Arthur tried to fight the subpoena, but the judge wasn't having it. We got the server dumps. It took us 3 nights of sifting through thousands of documents, but then we found it. The smoking gun. It was an email chain titled Budget Reallocation. In it, Bella explicitly wrote to Arthur, "We need to cut the structural budget by 15% to pay for the lobby renovation. Switch the steel. No one will notice." And underneath, Arthur had replied, "Approved. Make sure Morgan doesn't see this." It was dated 2 weeks after I was locked out of the system. It was proof of fraud, proof of conspiracy, and proof of my innocence, all in black and white. "He didn't just ruin the building," Marcus whispered, reading the screen over my shoulder. "He documented it. We didn't release the email to the press. We sent it to the investors, the group of wealthy bankers funding the project. They were the ones losing millions every day the construction was halted. They requested a meeting with me immediately." I walked into the boardroom, the same one where I used to present my ideas to Arthur. The head investor, a serious man named Mr. Sterling, looked at the email printout on the table. He looked furious. "We are removing Titan Architecture from the project effective immediately," Sterling said. "We are triggering the default clause in their contract." He looked at me. "Morgan, you know this building. Can it be saved?" I looked him in the eye. "Not as it is. The top 20 floors need to be stripped. The steel needs reinforcing. It will cost $50 million. Sterling nodded. "We don't care about the money anymore. We care about our reputation. We want you to take over. We want Morgan Studios to finish the job. The fallout for Titan Architecture was catastrophic. With the contract cancelled and the investors suing for fraud, the firm imploded. The bank called in Arthur's loans. He had no cash flow. He couldn't pay his staff. He couldn't pay the rent. Within a month, Titan Architecture declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The court ordered a liquidation of assets to pay back the creditors. Everything was up for sale. The computers, the furniture, the company cars, and the building itself. The headquarters of Titan Architecture, the office Arthur had ruled from for 30 years, was being auctioned off. It was a beautiful, historic building downtown. I checked our finances. Morgan Studios had been saving every penny. With the advance from the investors for taking over the Skyview project, we had capital. I put on my best suit. Get the car, I told Marcus. We're going shopping. The auction was held in a damp warehouse. It was humiliating for Arthur. He was there, looking like a ghost of his former self, frantically on the phone, trying to scrape together money from friends who were no longer answering his calls. He wanted to buy back his office, his throne. He saw me walk in, but he didn't say anything. He just stared. The bidding for the headquarters building started low. Arthur bid with money he didn't have. I countered. He bid again, his voice cracking. I countered again, calm and steady. The room went silent. The auctioneer looked at Arthur. Going once, going twice. Arthur slumped in his chair. He had nothing left. Sold to Morgan Studios, the auctioneer slammed the gavel. I didn't cheer. I just signed the paperwork. I had just bought the company that tried to destroy me, for pennies on the dollar. The next day, I went to the old Titan office. It was mine now. I walked through the glass doors. The staff, the ones who hadn't quit yet, looked up in shock. They looked tired and scared. You can keep your jobs, I announced loudly. But there are going to be changes. I walked toward the corner office. My old office. Bella was inside. She was shoving things into a box, crying hysterically. She looked up and saw me. You can't be in here, she screamed. This is my office. My dad owns this. I leaned against the doorframe. Actually, Bella, I own the building now. And you're trespassing. I signaled to the security guard, Jim, a man I had known for 10 years. Jim, please escort her out. Jim didn't hesitate. He stepped forward. Let's go, miss, he said firmly. Bella screamed as she was led out, still clutching her stapler. The office broke into applause. I walked down the hall to the main executive suite. Arthur was still there, sitting in the dark. He hadn't packed. He looked up at me, his eyes red. I built this, he whispered. I built this from nothing. I stood over him. No, Arthur. We built this. You just forgot who held the hammer. He tried one last manipulation. He stood up, shaky. Morgan, please. I'm an old man. Bella, she's not capable. I did it for her. I did it for family. You have to understand. It was the same line he used the day he betrayed me. I was your family, Arthur, I said, my voice void of emotion. I would have protected this legacy with my life. You chose the wrong daughter. I placed a cardboard box on his desk. You have 10 minutes to clear out personal effects. Security is waiting. The next year was the hardest work of my life. We stripped the Skyview Tower down to its bones. We removed the cheap steel. We tore down the dangerous glass. We rebuilt it the right way, safe, strong, and honest. It cost a fortune, but the investors trusted me. We rebranded the building. It was no longer the Skyview. We named it the Phoenix Tower. I moved Morgan Studios into the old Titan headquarters. We tore down the walls to make it an open concept. No more corner offices for nepotism babies. We created a culture where the best idea won, not the person with the right last name. The industry noticed. We were winning awards not for flashiness, but for integrity. We were the firm you hired when you wanted it done right. On the day the Phoenix Tower finally opened, I stood on the roof deck. The wind whipped my hair, but the building didn't sway. It was solid as a rock. I looked out over the city. I heard that Arthur had moved to Florida, living in a small condo, dodging lawsuits. Bella was working as an influencer, selling diet tea on social media, her architectural career over before it began. They were gone. The trap they had set for me had snapped shut on their own legs. I took a deep breath of the crisp city air. I wasn't just an employee anymore. I wasn't just a mentor. I was the owner. I was the builder. And looking at the skyline I had helped shape, I finally realized that the best revenge wasn't destroying them. It was succeeding without them. I turned back to the party inside, where my team, my real family, was waiting. Okay, I said to myself. Let's get to work.